So picture this, May 8th, 1902. An entire city just gone, wiped clean off the map by one of the most violent volcanic eruptions we've ever seen. It's a wild story of pure destruction, total political failure, and somehow, against all odds, impossible survival. Let's get right into it. 30,000. Let that number sink in for a second. That's how many people died when Mount Pelée erupted on the island of Martinique. Nearly 30,000 souls. And here's the really terrifying part. The entire city of Saint-Pierre was annihilated in less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes. But amidst that total unimaginable destruction, one guy basically just walked away. And he wasn't some prepared scientist or a hero soldier. Nope. He was a prisoner, locked away in a dungeon. This is the incredible story of how the absolute worst place to be on that island suddenly became the only place to be. To really understand this miracle, you first have to meet the man at the center of it all. His name was Ludger Sylbaris, and on the morning his world was about to end, well, his world had already been shrunk down to a tiny stone box. Sylbaris was just a regular guy, a laborer who, had a bit of a reputation for finding trouble. After one too many drinks and a pretty serious brawl, he got himself thrown into the prison's solitary confinement cell. We're talking a bomb-proof, windowless, partially underground dungeon. You'd think, man, that is the ultimate punishment. Little did anyone know it was about to become his salvation.
But here's the thing. This catastrophe didn't just come out of the blue. For weeks, Mount Pelée was practically screaming that something awful was on its way. The real problem? The people in power just weren't listening.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It starts off in late April with tremors and ash. Okay, concerning. Then the crater at the top of the volcano literally fills up with boiling water. On May 5th, a huge boiling mud flow wipes out a sugar mill and kills 150 people. By the night before the big one, the sky is lit up with volcanic lightning, and the whole mountain is glowing red. These weren't subtle hints. This was a full-blown declaration of war from the planet. And if that wasn't enough, nature herself tried to sound the alarm. As the ground started heating up, all the local critters fled for their lives. We're talking thousands of venomous snakes slithering into the city streets, giant foot-long centipedes, swarms of ants. It must have been like a horror movie. Get this, an estimated 50 people, a lot of them kids, were killed by snake bites before the volcano even blew its top. The animals knew it was coming. So, with all these insane warnings, you've got to be asking, why didn't people just evacuate? Well, this is where a natural hazard spirals into a man-made disaster. And the answer, as it so often does, comes down to politics. See, there was a huge election just days away. The city of Saint-Pierre was the main political stronghold for the party in charge, led by a guy named Governor Louis Moutet. They were absolutely terrified that if they evacuated their voters, their political rivals would cruise to victory. So they made a choice. They chose to prioritize winning an election over the lives of 30,000 people. And this quote right here, it pretty much reveals their whole strategy: deny, downplay, and deceive. The governor worked with the local newspaper to print these really reassuring articles, comparing Mount Pelée to Vesuvius, the volcano that buried Pompeii. It was a comparison that was not only incredibly wrong, but, as it turns out, fatally wrong. It was basically a 3-step plan to keep everyone in town. First, you use the media to spread misinformation. Second, you create a bogus scientific commission that, shocker, declares the city is perfectly safe. And third, and this is the part that is just chilling, they sent soldiers to block the roads leading out of the city, literally forcing anyone who tried to escape back into the danger zone. They didn't just fail to save them, they actively trapped them. And so, on the morning of May 8th, with the city packed and its people lied to and falsely reassured, the mountain finally had enough. The moment of apocalypse was here. Just before 8 in the morning, the mountain didn't erupt upwards like you see in the movies. No, it exploded sideways. A horizontal blast tore right out of its flank, aimed like a cannon directly at the heart of Saint-Pierre, only a few miles away. And what came out of that blast was something scientists had never really documented before. They actually gave it the French name that was born right out of this disaster, Nuée Ardente, which means glowing cloud. It's basically a pyroclastic surge, a horrifying, ground-hugging avalanche of superheated gas, ash, and rock. Okay, now just try to wrap your head around these numbers. The temperature inside this cloud was over 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt glass instantly. It was moving at over 670 kilometers an hour. That's faster than a high-speed bullet train. It covered the distance to Saint-Pierre in less than 2 minutes. There was no time to run, no time to hide. It was, for all intents and purposes, completely unsurvivable.
And just like that, the city was gone. In its place was just a silent, smoldering ruin. But out of this total destruction came one of history's greatest survival stories, and the birth of a brand new science.
Which brings us all the way back to our central mystery. How in the world did Ludger Sylbaris, locked in his little stone cell, survive something with the physics of an apocalypse? Well, the answer wasn't magic. It was accidental, but perfect engineering.
Think about it. The cell was partly underground, which insulated it from that insane surface heat. Its thick stone walls were strong enough to withstand the blast wave. And crucially, its only opening, this tiny little grate in the door, was facing away from the volcano. And because it had no windows, that deadly gas cloud just couldn't get in. It was, by pure dumb luck, the perfect volcanic bunker. He was trapped in that pitch-black cell for 4 days. He said later that superheated ash was pouring through that tiny door grate. The only reason he survived was by peeing on his own clothes and stuffing them into the opening to breathe through. When rescuers finally made their way into the silent ruins of the city, they heard his cries. They found him horribly burned, but somehow impossibly alive. And this is where the story just takes a bizarre turn. You'd think his ordeal was over, but nope. In a lot of ways, it was just getting started. Sylbaris' trauma was about to be turned into a public spectacle. After he was pardoned for his crimes, his survival story was basically turned into a product. He got hired by the Barnum and Bailey Circus and was billed as the man who lived through Doomsday. And his act? It was just to stand in a replica of his prison cell, tell his horrifying story, and show his burn scars to the paying crowds. But, that kind of fame doesn't last. After the circus, he just faded away and died totally unknown in Panama. But the true legacy of Saint-Pierre is so much bigger than one man's incredible story. The absolute horror of what happened there forced the entire scientific community to rethink everything they thought they knew about volcanoes. This disaster was the tragic birth of modern volcanology. This French scientist Alfred Lacroix went there to study the aftermath. He's the one who coined the term Nuée Ardente and created the Pelée classification for eruptions. He realized that the deadliest threat wasn't always lava flowing down a mountain, but these superheated, sideways blasts. That one fundamental shift in understanding, it created the foundation for how we assess volcanic risk today, a lesson that now helps protect millions of people who live in the shadow of these giants. So in the end, the story of Mount Pelée leaves us with this one kind of heavy question. The volcano, it was just a force of nature, powerful, deadly, but predictable in its own way. But the decisions that people made, the choice to ignore the warnings and to trap an entire city for political gain, that's what turned a natural hazard into a historic catastrophe. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most dangerous force on this planet isn't the mountain itself, but the human decisions we make at its feet.